If you as a coach want to have consistent 100,000, 250,000, 500,000 or higher months, one of the key systems we need working in your business is your sales process. And you simply need to be able to have a reliable process that brings in leads and has them sign up and pay you. And that's exactly what I want to show you in this episode. Now, I've sold a multi-7-figure coaching business. I've done hundreds of hours consulting 6, 7, and 8-figure coaches. And today my company is behind the scenes running the marketing and the sales of some of the most successful coaching businesses. I simply shared that because I've spent an ungodly amount of time thinking and solving the issues that hold coaches back from making sales. Now, in this free course series, I've walked you through so far the lead generation, and this specific part of the process that we're focusing on today is what we call the $1 million application funnel. This is having a lead go into a sales conversation. And for today's example, I'm going to assume that we're doing a 2-call close process. So there's 2 calls. There's one initial call, typically, let's say it's 15 minutes, which is really to qualify the lead, make sure that we can actually help them. Then it goes into a second call, typically a little bit longer, that then actually make sure that we can close that client in giving you money. That's all we're doing here. We don't need to overcomplicate it. Now, we do use a very similar process if you're selling via direct messages or emails, but I'm just going to use the example and assume today we're closing via calls. And one thing is there is a bunch of coaches that like to social signal, and they like to say things that they don't do sales calls, and they think it's a really cool thing. I don't quite understand why they think this is a brag. You simply choose the sales mechanism that is best to match your market, your offer, how you want your business to run, and your skill set. And many times coaches social signal that they're not selling through sales calls because they're above that, where typically they probably just lack the skill set and character traits to actually build an effective sales team and be able to lead that sales team to do what they need to do. So it's kind of like the fox and the grapes, where the fox sees some grapes hanging in a tree. He tries to jump, he jumps, he can't get the grapes. And then finally he gives up, walks away and says, well, those grapes are sour anyway. No, the grapes weren't sour. You just didn't have the skills and character traits to get the bloody grapes and to make that work in the first place. So anyway, rant over on that one. So I don't think it's a brag, but what I do care about is you having the most effective and most efficient means to make sales that drive profits, that reduces operational drag, and that builds a business that you enjoy running. That's what matters. So the application funnel, the app funnel, is more than just a sales pipeline. This is going to be finely tuned conversion engine crafted to outperform and outshine your competition, because this really matters. Because if you're spending money on ads, if you're spending time and money on pumping out content and you're getting leads coming through, but again, you're not seeing your sales targets, you're not seeing your company grow in profit and revenue month to month, then very likely we need to be able to fix this. And a part of this app funnel, there is 8 meticulously engineered steps designed to be able to capture the attention, transform their skepticism into curiosity, and to be able to turn their curiosity into commitment. That's what we're trying to do. Skepticism to curiosity, curiosity to commitment. And this isn't going to be about trying to be another voice in the crowd. This is you standing out as the only voice that is truly going to actually understand and deliver the value that your prospect's looking forward to. And really in a way where your app funnel differentiates you from the pack because of the way that you're doing this as well. So it's built to engage deeper and to be able to give them the personalization needed to be able to get them to say, yes, here's my credit card details, let's rock and roll. That's what we're doing here. And really importantly, we build this in a way so by the time they reach the end of the funnel, they're not just ready to buy, they're ready to invest in a high ticket solution that they believe in. So let me walk you through each of these stages. Okay, so let me actually walk you through each of these steps. Is really the $1 million application funnel. The important thing is that you actually have all of these working together. Now, if you look at all of it at once and you go, oh my God, Chris, this looks like a little bit of overkill, don't worry about it. If a meathead like me can understand this, you're going to be perfectly fine as we go through it as well. But it is really important to understand, and why I've actually created the diagram like this, that each step has to lead on to the next. They need to link onto the next as well. And I will just say one thing that's really important as we go through this process as well, is if you're not tracking each of these stages in the pipeline and where they're breaking off. So for example, let's just say we go call to action content. So where we need call to action content to get people to the application page, do we actually have the number, the metric that is what you need people to be doing so that we know people are going? Then people hitting the application page, going to the choose time page. Do we actually know, again, what is going on for them to be able to go through? So it's really important because we need to be able to actually have the pipeline, the metrics, the reporting, the tracking in this process. Because a lot of the time when we come into a coaching business, we're going to be asking for these things. And if they're not there, okay, that's perfectly fine. It's actually quite common for that to happen as well. So don't freak out if that's you right now. But we need to be able to put that together really quickly so that you can sleep at night. And I say you can sleep at night because the idea is you will sleep like a brick when you know that each of these processes are working together, because ideally at the end of the day, what you're going to see is you're going to be seeing a lot of money because clients are going to be coming on because they are converting. But for that to actually happen right now, we need to get them through all of these processes from one to the next. We need to engineer each of these steps to happen, because when we do, that's when we can have a reliable, predictable machine to be able to build your business. So let's actually go through this process right now and make this really practical and useful for you. So I'm going to explain this so you understand each of these steps. So top of funnel content. This is literally just the content that you need to be putting out so people that don't know you know you. We're not going to cover that in today's episode together. Now, this is something we need to talk about. Your call to action content. So what is the actual content, whether it's organic post or whether it's a paid, what is the actual piece of content that is going to get them into the sales process, into the actual $1 million application funnel? So what you need to do when it comes to this is really important that you grasp this, is you need to be able to have the copy, the creative, the offer that is what you want them to take that next step. Because remember, what we're trying to do is we want them to go from, let's say, Facebook or Instagram over to your application page to then take the next steps through. Because if we don't do that, the rest of the funnel could be working really splendidly, but we've got very little leads actually coming into the top of this funnel right now. So what you need to do is, when I say have an offer that gets them to take that next step, is you want them to be able to have that process put together. That is going to have them saying, yes, I'm more than willing to see this person, this ideally, not ideally, but really this stranger on the internet. I'm going to take the next step to be able to go into what could be the solution to their pain point as well. Because once we've actually got the call to action content pulled together, that's when we need to hit them with the application page. So this is either going to be a form, it could be a wait list of some sort. Ideally what we have in this as well, the vast majority of the time, is what we call a DTO video, direct to offer video. So this is going to be a video. Typically it's somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes long, and it's going to present the actual offer for what they're going to be getting themselves into at the end. Now, do we sell the actual program? Do you sell your coaching offer? No, but we're giving them a good grasp as to what it is that we're going to be doing to solve their problem, for them to be able to go, yes, I think that is the actual solution that I need. And they're going to then go through into the sales process. So it's really important that if you don't have a 5 to 10 to 15 minute video that is able to explain your offer in the way for how you help them, for who you help, what separates you, and is ideally going to be getting them wanting to be able to chew glass and crawl through snow to be able to get it to what it is that you want. That is what we need on this page to be able to make sure that we have plenty of leads going into your actual sales pipeline. Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that. The ball's in your court. Now, next, pretty obvious, choose time. We need them to get to choose a time to talk with you or one of your team members when it actually comes to being able to have the actual conversation. Again, this page is typically just going to be a headline, a sub-headline, and the calendar. We've tested having social proof on this page where we can have a ton of different videos, different screenshots, all of that stuff. And honestly, it hasn't changed conversions when it comes to, we've actually found the simpler this page is, the less distractions there are, and simply letting the headline, sub-headline, and then obviously the calendar do its job for getting them to actually choose a time. Now, the thank you page is really important. So once they've chosen a time, we're sending them to what we're just calling a thank you page, where ideally we actually have a video that is either of you or of one of your key sales team members that is going to be then walking them through the key next steps. Those key next steps are going to be, number one, make sure this is in your calendar because it'd be a bummer if you missed out. Number two, there is something critical and important for you to watch or do before you get onto the call so that you can make the most of it. So we're prepping them into what it is that they need to do to go into the call, because it's not about just getting them to apply. We need them to apply, but we need them to show up, and we need them to show up hot, ready, and really willing to know what it is that you have for them as well. So this is why we created this pre-triage page. So on this page, this is typically going to be a piece of content. Now, it doesn't actually have to be a video on this specific page in the funnel. You could drive them to a YouTube video. You could drive them to a podcast episode. You're going to drive them to a piece of content at the end of the day, so you just understand the principle of this, which is going to be doing a couple of different things. Number one, we want them to be able to actually have the logistical questions, some if not most of the logistical questions of what you do answered in this question. So this is where you could talk about the cadence of communication, what's involved in your coaching programs, how it is that you actually help them, without going into too nitty-gritty detail, but giving them a good overview so they have that warm, fuzzy feeling as to how this is actually going to work for them. The second part is we actually want to be able to start answering their objections. So any sales team that I come into, what I want to be able to do is I want to have a conversation with sales team and say, hey, what are the objections? What are the things that these prospects are saying that are stopping them from buying? And we put together a list of the objections. Typically, there's going to be 3, 4, 5 key objections. Now, what I want to do as a marketer, I want to be able to then actually pre-answer those objections. So if you think of the movie Inception, I want to be able to incept them with the actual solution, with the actual answer to those objections. So by the time they actually get to the call with a salesperson, they're not going to have that objection. They're not going to have that pushback. It's already been solved. And so I want to be the best possible marketer I can be so that I'm pretty much turning my sales team into bears with just salmon jumping in their mouths. That's why we have this entire process. Because when we have this process put together properly, that's when we're going to actually be able to say, hey, we can have really high conversion rates. And the best thing of all, your sales team can close at much higher rates, and they don't have to be as good, to be perfectly honest, because you've done so much of the heavy lifting for them as well. So that is why we have the pre-triage page. Then obviously the next step after that is going to be we need them to actually have the first conversation. The idea of this first conversation is really a case of, number one, we want to qualify them and we want to know, can we actually help them? And we want to be able to make sure that they are wanting exactly what it is that we have. This is typically why we want to have a 10, 15-minute conversation here to qualify them so that it's not going to, number one, book out a ton or a big chunk of the salesperson's time, and it's not going to burn away their time if they're not qualified as well. This is also why typically when we build out our sales processes for our partners and we actually do the sales for them as well, we'll typically have 2 team members doing this. We'll have someone holding the triage and then someone holding the strategy session that is the closing session as well. So that's why we want to have a triage and why we do a 2-call close process rather than a 1-call close process. Then, this is an important gap because what a lot of coaches have been doing, if I go here, what a lot of coaches have been doing, you can't really see because my head's in the way, is they try and go from the triage and they go all the way straight to the closing session and they try and go close, and there's very little communication, if anything, in between the two. Now, the reason why we actually have this pre-strategy here is, again, it's either going to be a piece of content. So ideally we want to be able to have them sent an email that once they've had that triage conversation, they get sent an email. There's going to be a key piece of content for them to be able to watch that, again, does the objection handling. But ideally, look, understand the principle. We just need them to get onto that strategy call. So we want to make sure that we have that actual conversion rate from showing up to the triage call to showing up to the strategy call. Whenever there's a big fall off between triage and strategy in a coaching business, I know there's a big hole that we need to fix. It's a big problem. And typically we do that because the pre-strategy hasn't been set up properly. So the pre-strategy is going to make sure it bridges the two conversations. Again, it pre-solves objections that are going to be happening, and it's going to be getting them onto that strategy call, hot, ready, really willing to buy. So they're pretty much going to be just a couple of, they just need the strategy session to give them that warm, fuzzy feeling, that confidence and the clarity of what they're getting themselves into so that they can happily hand over their credit card and then go on from that process. Because once we have that done, when they are actually showing up to this strategy session now, then the person is able to follow a really simple sales process. We script these out all the time. They're really basic. There is nothing that magical about this. There is nothing that you need to freak out about. A lot of people overcomplicate the closing and sales conversation as well. We just need to make sure that everything is confirmed, make sure that they're happy, make sure that they know what they're getting themselves into, make sure they know how to be a good client so that they get the best results. And very importantly, there is that proper handoff between sales and delivery as well, because this is where the onboarding starts. This is really where we want to nail in this strategy, that we want to make sure that they are having an absolute blissful onboarding process, because we want them to get the best possible results in the coaching program, and because we want them to stay as well. We don't want them to have a rickety start, because if they do, that's when buyer's remorse starts up. That's when you can actually really start to lose people. That's when you're going to see a lot of churn happening as well. So in this process from here, this is why we want to have each of these things lined up, why we want them linked together, why you want to track each metric between all of these so that you can see what is actually broken or missing, because then it's really easy to diagnose a problem, to fix it, to increase the conversions, because then from there, this is bringing everything that we've been going over in this free course series for you, and then you're going to make sure that you're closing the client and you're hitting the profit targets that you really want to. So there you have it. And if you haven't subscribed, then you know the drill. I recommend that you do, because in the upcoming episodes, I'm going to be walking you through the exact processes we use to scale 7- and 8-figure coaching businesses. And if you found this episode and you haven't gone through the starting episodes of this free course series, then I'll drop a link in the description so you can access to that completely for free. And also, if you just want us to come in to build, install, and run the entire marketing system that is selling 20 plus new clients every week, then I suggest you schedule a free one-on-one demo. Now, this is not a sales call. This is our way to firstly answer all of your questions, qualify if we can actually help you, and actually then walk you through how we would exactly scale your offer. Then if it's a good fit and we think we can actually do it, and you're interested in us coming in and being able to do it all for you, then we can have a conversation after that as well. But as always, I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show, or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.